Welcome to the Film Florida podcast. My name is John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Today, our guests are Natalie Cisneros and Robert Brown from Jekyll Works. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today, Natalie and Robert.
Thank you.
Hi.
I like to start each interview with a little bit of backstory. So, Natalie, you go first. Tell me, how did you get your start in the industry?
So I actually started while I was in undergrad. I went to the University of Florida. I got a BFA in creative photography. While I was studying there, I started to become an intern with Jekyll Works, working with Robert. So wherever Jekyll Works needed extra hands, I was basically there. This evolved into becoming their staff photographer, retoucher, and then as I became like a full-time employee, I moved into producing all of the photo and video shoots. And we're pretty small, so that meant the producing could lead into art directing, capturing, editing. It just really depended on what was needed for that particular project. And it was really great because the stuff that I learned at UF, I applied on the job almost immediately. And the stuff that I learned on the job, I applied to my art and on schoolwork. So it was a really wonderful experience that I think I was just really lucky to have. So that's where I started.
Robert?
I didn't get to go to college for art school. I started at a sign company, actually, right after high school. And I started as a production person in the back shop, building signs and figuring out how to assemble other people's designs. After about a year or two of doing that, I worked my way into the design department and started learning about typography and, the software at the time, and how to run large format printers and various other sign machinery. And after a few years of doing that, I was recruited by the then owner of Jekyll Works to come work as a full-time lead designer. And so I took that job, and from there, I just designed every day and was lead on most projects that came into the shop.
So I believe Jekyll Works has been around a little more than 10 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Tell us what the company does.
So Jekyll Works creates brand-oriented multimedia content for companies who really, really need an expert creative eye. And we have a large skill set that really allows us to work on all sorts of different projects, from VFX to motion graphics to commercial video to graphic design and specialty photography. Since we've been around the block for so long, we really have kind of dabbled in almost any type of project. So we're really project driven, and typically people come to us if they're looking for a specific either skill set or a specific viewpoint on something. And we really, really are passionate about the creative process and working with our clients to realize the campaign or project that they are working on. Robert, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, Jekyll Works, it's kind of hard to explain. It's usually a problem even just talking about what we do, because we do so much different things. In the past, we've really been, I want to say project oriented, but everything's kind of project oriented. Clients usually come to us with a difficult task in mind that they don't really know who to go find to help execute the project. So we'll come in and use what we've learned over the years to guide them a little bit. And sometimes that means we're producing and managing. Sometimes that means we're actually in the nitty-gritty coding the back end of the website. Jekyll Works is really about taking the sum of our talents and helping a client figure out how to get their project made or completed. There's times when we come in late in a project after it's been going for a set amount of time, and then we end up picking up pieces or helping manage just to the final. Sometimes we're at the very beginning of the project and we're doing all the logistics and from the beginning to the end. But our main focus really is just using our creative skills to help solve creative problems that a client will have. It's that simple. It's hard to run down a laundry list of what we do because, we've done 200-300 page websites with back ends all the way to motion graphics work, to visual effects compositing, to just, producing a commercial for people. So it's a pretty wide gamut of work.
And really, at the end of the day, it's kind of however our clients really need us. A lot of times too, we fulfill roles that maybe our clients, they're just in conversation, they're talking to us about a creative problem that they're having, and then, we come up with an idea right on the fly that maybe spurs them into a better direction or spurs them into thinking of something that would solve that particular problem. So we really kind of mold ourselves to fit the needs of our clients kind of at any given moment. And I feel like with us, with the type of creatives we are, I feel like that's just what we're good at.
It sounds like you guys are really service oriented, and so you listen to what your clients' needs are and then kind of make suggestions as to the best way to accomplish those. And since you guys have so many different skill sets, you're able to touch a lot of different areas in order to get them the best result in the end.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
I mean, we also have a network of people that we've worked with over the years that, sometimes we'll bring them in or just refer over if it's something that isn't an exact fit for us, but is maybe a better fit for someone we know that can, do the job a little bit better, or, it's more tailored. So it's a good thing to be able to help a company realize what they really need, even when they may not necessarily know it themselves. So
Right, exactly. You guys are located on the Space Coast in Brevard County, but I know your work goes beyond the local community. Talk about that.
Yeah, so we have, like Robert had mentioned, we have partners in throughout the country, mainly in Los Angeles and New York City that we work with. And we've worked with these partners for a really long time and long enough so that they know how we operate. We know how they operate, and so we can really integrate well and mesh well with their production pipeline. So if anything comes across their desk that they feel would be a good fit for us, we get a call, take a look at the project, and see what our schedule is like. And usually we fit it in because the projects that we work on with them are usually pretty fun. So yeah, we have a network that we call upon. So that's that. But I also want to say, though, that the local work that we do here and does end up as part of national campaigns or global marketing materials in general. The types of clients that we tend to get here are great companies that are doing really incredible stuff. Sometimes when people say, oh, local work, it's maybe there's an air of not as high end, or maybe not as many eyeballs on it. And that can be true, but in our case, the type of local work that we have been lucky enough to be a part of has also been national stuff.
Well, the local clients that we do or work with are usually small to medium-sized businesses. So, and we do a lot of manufacturing companies in Florida. We've done corporate videos. We've also done motion graphics for them. We've done print campaigns, all kinds of different work locally. And a lot of those times, these manufacturing clientele, their clients are other manufacturers or other part suppliers. So our end eyeballs looking at our work is not like a standard consumer looking on a television or listening to the radio or social media oriented, whatever. They're not consuming those projects how it's typically consumed. These are targeted campaigns that go out to like a group of mechanics or go out to guide boat fishermen. So it's just different. And it's interesting to be able to see kind of how those companies work. Usually when we go in to do work with these smaller businesses, you're working directly with the business owner. There's not really a buffer. There's no producers or art directors or marketing departments. There's none of that stuff. We have to go in and work directly with the person making the decisions. So we get to see how our work affects them, how it affects the company, and how it actually brings sales and more customers to that business directly. The converse of that is working with some of the agencies and studios we work with. across the country. So those are usually a little bit bigger projects just because they have to be, and there's more moving parts, and there's a lot of input from a bunch of different talent. So it's a bigger team, and you get the reward of working on that team, and you get the insight of a bunch of different artists showing their skills and pressing the project to be as amazing as it can be. And so we pay attention to that, and we try to bring those techniques that we learn, the quality of job that you get from a bigger budget, back to the local community so that we can elevate everything from the base up. At the end of the day, we want them to look as good as they can look within the budget that they have. And so we really try to flex the boundaries of that and push them to do things that maybe they would be a little bit more, reserved on. I mean, I'm not afraid to crack open VFX in the middle of a corporate gig and show them how it works,
Sure.
Or use some coding to get some automation done to make things happen a little bit faster. And these are things that I've picked up working on bigger jobs with coders, So
Right.
It's about like the transference. Working with the business owner helps me understand the business decisions made at a larger scale. Working with the team of artists helps me bring those ideas and executions and techniques to the local market. And it just makes everything a better product.
And that really has served us well, that transference, because I can't tell you how many jobs where, we've worked with artists or other talent or other production hubs, and they just not understanding fabrication or the client's needs. And because we've had to deal with kind of both sides, we have a better way to communicate with both sets of people.
Well, even how to balance a budget. An artist a lot of times is focused on the art. They're
Right.
focused on making the best design possible. They're not thinking about the macro view of how this money is being spent in relation to a marketing budget. We go in and work directly with people and their marketing budget. So all of that has to be kept in context while you're working on the job.
Yep.
Speaking about doing a little bit of everything, when you first started your time at Jekyll Works, while things were starting to blend as an industry, there was still a separation in different aspects of things, whether it was photography, design, motion graphics, things like that. I mean, I remember talking to people, and I didn't understand if I would talk to a motion graphics person and they couldn't design something, and they would say, well, I make the things move, but somebody needs to design the elements that then I can make move on screen. And that was surprising to me. I didn't understand how things weren't kind of all blended together. Now, it seems like specialists are completely outdated. So talk about the need and your strength in being so flexible and so nimble to do so many different things.
I think both Robert and I feel like specialists aren't necessarily outdated, but I think in terms of Jekyll Works, we've always been really flexible and nimble. I think to a degree that really just makes us unique. We've always really strove to help our clients with really literally any creative problem that they may bring to us or that comes up in conversations. And that really means like being as involved in helping come up with overarching marketing campaigns to just as scaled back as animating just art for a project. So at the core, we're really just creatives, and we never limit our minds or our skill sets. And that attitude really serves us well. And really, we get loyal clientele because they know we have their best interests at heart. But I think like we're a little unique in that regard. There are specialists out there that really only do like texturing UVs. And now I'll pass it to Robert to get more technical.
I had an interesting, this question actually made me think a lot about it, because the people I work with a lot of the time are specialists. And I'm actually contracted a lot to become a specialist myself. In the motion graphics world in particular, this question makes sense. You do have to blend. You do have to be able to design something and animate it. You do have to know color theory, composition, and you have to be able to execute. That's always going to be motion graphics. Things change. You have to iterate often. You have to solve the problem on the fly. And I think that that's particular with the motion graphics industry. Now, the VFX industry is a completely different beast because the jobs, it sounds like a compressed timeline, but there really is a need for a lot of people to work on a job and those people to have very specific skill sets. So it's like a special problem requires the special solution, and that's when you find the specialist. There's always going to be generalists doing 90 different things because they're generalists. That's the job. But that special texture painter or special groomer or a guy who's just that good at typography that, you know, he's the specialist for typography. They exist, and they've been in every job I've ever worked on. They're the magic people that know how to do things that you just can't wrap your head around. So,
right. Okay.
I really appreciate the specialists, to be honest, because those are the people I learn the most from. And those are the people that actually allow me to specialize in something when I'm called upon to be a specialist. But that being said, I think right now it's about 50-50. 50% of the time I'm a generalist. I have to wear a bunch of different hats and execute whatever vision comes in front of me. There's been times when I've actually done 3D pipeline development, and that's putting hardware together, writing software, and then working with artists to make sure that their vision spits out at the end of the render flow. But then at the same time, I've had to do 3D rigging, texturing, animating, you know, render management and compositing all on the same job. And I was one of 5 or 6 people doing the same thing. So it's a weird question. I don't think specialists are outdated. I actually think they're just more special.
Yeah. But I do think, like, if you're interfacing with the client will expect you to kind of be a generalist or to expect you to do it all. But, you know, they're not in production, and they shouldn't be. They need to be worried about their product or their story and let the point of contact work with the production team to get all those particular specialists, or just really work the production pipeline to fit the job. But, yeah, I think probably more likely the clients are looking for creatives to understand their company. And I think probably from their perspective, they're thinking like, oh, they'll just do it all.
But it's also imperative that we help educate the client. I mean, it makes our job easier, and it makes it gives the whole process a vernacular, and I think it elevates the industry a little bit, because now you have these clients who have worked with a production group, and then the next production group they work with, they're going to know a little bit more on how to interface with those people. They're going to be able to talk a little bit more their language. It's just like, I think it's just a general thing to like try to educate as much as possible. Try to be educated in our industry and try to help educate and push that forward a little bit. It's a pipeline paradigm. You never hand off a job that's incomplete because it's going to muck up the works down the line. I try to apply that to almost everything we do, because if I'm handing it off to another group, I want them to enjoy the work too. I want to get a call from them that says, hey, thanks for handing off a great job. Now, if it's, you know, like I think that's kind of, it's really important to like help along the way. So
right. Yeah.
It sounds like one of the big advantages you guys have as a company, though, is your ability to be both a specialist and a generalist depending on the need of the project.
For sure. I mean, but that comes with 10 plus years of sweat equity and late nights, you know, doing some of that stuff.
Right.
And like I said, I think that just puts us in a really, really unique position that I don't think that's normal. Like, I don't think normally people can say that.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of times when we start a job with someone, people don't know what we do. So we end up getting approached to do research and development, concept visualization, things like that, like Photoshop work or rendering, you know, and then they see our boards or the decks that we put together for a project that they're pitching to someone totally different. And they ask, well, can you do the project? And we go, yeah, we actually do those projects. But we're not trying to step on people's toes. We're trying to show our work and show what we can do for the project itself. We're like, we eat, sleep, and drink creativity. That's what our spare time is spent learning how to make a better piece of art or a better project, or learning an animation technique, or staying on top of software that's coming out. That's what we do. It's what we find fun. And then teaching others and learning about that is also fun.
Yeah, like we're really big advocates for like the creative process and the talent that is involved in the creative process. So whether it comes to like clients or people joining the team, like we're all about making sure everyone's on the same page, making sure everyone knows what's going on, and including everybody as much as they want to be included, even down to the client.
Yeah, you never know where a great idea is going to come from. Sometimes they hide.
Yeah.
So with technology being ever changing and you guys doing so much in the visual effects field, I remember a time when visual effects was a luxury. Everybody wanted it, but everybody said, oh, we can't afford it. But with the advancements in the field, great things are possible now at very reasonable budgets. How have the advancements in technology help or even hurt that part of the industry?
I think for the most part, it raises the bar for everybody. I think also there's this really great democratization where technology now is allowing people that maybe couldn't have access to some of those technologies be creative, which is amazing because then you get new ideas come through and it just leads to everybody getting better in some ways. I think sometimes where it hurts is I feel like sometimes the industry, maybe some of the like Hollywood movies could rely a little too much on VFX and post work. And so then the story can tend to suffer when you rely just too heavily on that. And then because of this wonderful democratization, you also get lots of competition. So then you have to figure out how to distinguish yourself from everybody else doing also really amazing stuff so that you can do what you love and get paid for it. So go ahead, Robert.
I mean, when I first started doing this stuff, I remember the first piece of 3D software I used was Maya, and it was astronomically expensive. The company bought it for me as a license to work on, learn, and start creating with, and that was a gift. Now you can rent it. And so it's not just like technology changing in the way of it's getting better, but access to that technology is becoming way more affordable to the standard user. I know a lot of people still want the perpetual license of Adobe Creative Suite, but, I do like being able to test out new technologies that come out every quarter that just weren't there, in the previous. So I think that it is causing everybody to really try, and you're seeing a lot of new techniques pop out. I mean, Instagram, if you follow any of the motion graphics communities on Instagram, it's crazy. There's constantly new stuff. But what there seems to be a giant lack of, even this new stuff, is a narrative point. We're seeing a lot of, I just call them screensaver candy. It's really pretty pictures. They're very compelling in a abstract visual standpoint, but what is it saying to me? And I think that no matter what we do, that is going to rise to the surface. That's what our clients need. That's what, an actual viewer wants to see at the end of the day. They want, what are you trying to tell me? So when it comes to hurting the industry with just bells and whistles, I think you're always going to have bells and whistles. I think you're always going to have, just the candy coating put on top of abstract stuff. And, it's going to have eyeballs that catch it and people are going to really enjoy it. But I think there's always going to be that room for, we need to see something that has a point, and that will rise to the top. The other thing that I think from a hurt side of the industry is the labor cost is going down a lot. Some of the people I work with, they lose jobs to cheaper labor overseas.
Sure.
You end up with an animator who will work for $10 a day, and where the LA cost is $75 an hour in some situations. And you do see the difference. You definitely see the difference. And you're really not going to get the same quality of work. And the really scary thing is when the client doesn't see the difference and they are comparing it. And the artist is like, that's apples and oranges, man. And the client's like, well, it is what I want, and I'm going to pay for it. So there comes that point where you got to ask yourself, is this the client I want? Do I need to search for a bigger client pool or do a different type of job? I do like the idea that pressure makes diamonds. I like the idea that competition drives things forward, but I think there's a point where it becomes unsustainable and we're just lowering the quality of the industry, and that's not a good thing.
To that point, the advancements have also made everybody experts because there is so much accessibility. So talk about some of those challenges where people incorrectly think difficult tasks are easy and they have unrealistic expectations of budgets versus time because their cousin or their younger brother has this software and quote unquote knows it, and therefore it should be really easy and quick and cheap.
I mean, honestly, this runs into being mainly a logistics problem for us, just because we're into the budgeting usually with these people. So it's just trying to convince them that our work is different. And there's been times I've said, go ahead, use your cousin. I want to see his work, and I want to learn something from what this guy in his basement can do for you. But 9 times out of 10, he can build the website or he can do the animation. What he can't do is, coordinate a media buy or localize it for 22 countries. Or, there's always that extra little bit that you kind of need a team for or the experience for. And that doesn't mean that guy can't learn to do that. And I would be more than happy to bring him in and help show him how to do that on the next project. But when you're in the room and someone tries to use that as a bargaining chip, it's just up to me to be a good educator and help that client understand that what they're asking for isn't pushing a button. They're paying for artistry, they're paying for a vision, they're paying for a point of view. And that's imperative. And if that doesn't work out with the client, that's fine. That means it's not a good fit. And our job is to leave a good impression so that maybe in the future, if that person or the client has, a negative experience with another business or a freelancer or whatever, that they can come back and there's no animosity. We can all talk and say, yeah, what a learning experience. Let's move forward. What's the project now? Let's execute it at a high level and really enjoy this task.
And it is always our job. The onus is a little on us to communicate effectively what exactly the client is getting. So if a client is thinking that something is going to be easy when in fact it's really not, the onus is a little on us to educate them as to why it's not, and to show them as best we can. Now, if they don't choose to believe us, well, that's not something that we can control. But like Robert was saying, we always leave the door open because this process, the creative process, is a little mystifying for people. So when people get in the door here or begin to work with us, we try and demystify that a little and try and include them as much as they want to be included in the creative process.
A thing that our clients, I hope, understand, when you hire Jekyll Works to do a job, there's a large focus put onto your company. We're coming in, we're researching what's being done, especially if you're manufacturing. We want a factory tour. We want to know what is happening, how it works, why your product's good. It's really focused. We're not going to count every revision cycle. Our focus becomes making a good end product to help sell the company's product or help, have a better vision for that company. It really becomes kind of personal when we get to that point because It's our work, so.
And Natalie, whether it's your time at Jekyll Works or prior to that, what's your favorite project you've ever worked on?
There's been quite a few, actually, but one that sticks out, we got to be a part of a Cheerios commercial that filmed in St. Cloud, and it was just a really amazing thing to be a part of. And what we did and our evolution on the project just kind of illustrates exactly kind of how Jekyll Works is. We got a design call for a deck to help visualize the concept for a production company in Los Angeles. And once we did that, they asked us to do camera documentation, just filming documentation of the fabrication of the concept. And this concept was a huge sign, not a typical billboard sign, but a huge sign that said "Made with Real Honey." And the idea was that they were going to get a local beekeeper to pour his actual honey into the sign, where people could turn a spigot at the base of the sign and get the honey from the sign directly.
Okay.
So it was this huge sign, and it was at a farmer's market in St. Cloud. They were going to do a little documentary commercial at the farmer's market. They were going to interview the beekeeper. Cheerios had decided to make a limited edition Cheerios cereal with this particular beekeeper's honey. We got called right from the start to help design the idea for this sign. then they said, okay, well, we're going to be contracting out Cinnabar to fabricate the sign. Could you go and film kind of behind the scenes fabrication of it? So yeah, we did that. We kind of documented how everything was coming together. We ended up reporting back to the director and the production company, because we'd see a couple things on set or, just filming and get excited and just, say like, oh, hey, this is what's going on. And so we inadvertently became their production liaison on the ground. So that led to like going with Cinnabar to do a site survey to make sure the sign was in position exactly where the director wanted it. I went and took pictures. We measured things. Oh, and then in addition to that, we visualized the 3D mock-up of the sign because once the design deck got approved, then Robert could mock that up in 3D. So the site survey photos that I took, Robert then was able to composite a 3D render of what the sign would look like so that the director and the production company could get much better of a feel of what they'd have on the ground when they came, because they would fly in and just have like maybe a half a day to prep, and then it would be time to film. So they didn't have that time beforehand to kind of get things prepped. So that's where we stepped in. Then the day of, we were video B-roll, as well as I was the on-site photographer for the installation, the general event, and some very specific PR photos for Cheerios. And then, unfortunately, the sign had a malfunction on the day of, which caused some concern. So luckily Robert and I were both there. Luckily we were there. So, the director called us over and said, hey, could you do some on-site just VFX cleanup of this particular shot just to kind of calm some of the nerves that the client has. So Robert, found a back room and did some like VFX work on some of the footage right then so that the client would be relieved that this commercial wouldn't be off the rails.
Yeah.
And then once everything wrapped, then Robert continued working on the rest of the VFX shots. Then the commercial got released. I mean, that whole process from the very beginning of us working on ideas for the design of this thing, down to the post-production VFX work and everything in between, I feel like is how we are. We make ourselves available, and that always guides us well. And we always end up in situations where somebody needs something, and we're just able to step in and help in really meaningful ways.
And Robert, do you have a favorite project?
Yeah, it was one of my first big 3D projects. It was for THX Sound. They used to do these trailers. The first one was like the deep note, you'd see in the front of a THX certified theater, this THX trailer showing off the quality of the theater sound system. So They contracted one of the production companies I was working for to come up with one of those new trailers. And the idea was this void room where organic objects, grow, and each one is making a different tone within the deep note, and they all eventually come together in a cacophony of sound, and it's revealed that they've all been growing on the surface of the THX logo. So I initially was doing design work for boards yet again, and we did probably 3 or 4 weeks of boards, and then the boards that I worked on got selected for the project. So the company wanted me to fly out to LA and run the 3D part, and I was a much younger 3D artist at the time, and I hadn't done 3D pipeline work. When I arrived, I realized that they didn't have a 3D pipeline at all. So I jumped in and just started, renting computers, getting licenses to software, putting all the pipeline together, and that was the technical side of it, and coming up with vendor management solutions. And then I also did 3D modeling, texturing, rigging, animation, and then I ended up having to do some compositing too on the project. We did have a lot of other artists working on the project too, so I had to be kind of an art director at the same time. I was the only one in the shop who really had any 3D experience. So, it was in between a few other movies going on at the time. So we were having an influx of artists come in that were, one guy ended up going to Weta after this project, and we had a guy at coming from Rhythm and Hughes before it closed. So, you have these different artists coming in, and you have to quickly communicate with them what you need. You have to see if their skill set's right for the job, and either push them through the pipeline or say, sorry, we need to find someone else. So that became my job too, and it was just a really interesting trial by fire. And it was originally like a 3 to 4 week commitment. It turned into a 12-week commitment. And
wow.
we released the Amazing Life trailer, and it's still one of the most popular THX trailers that were produced. It was a really fun process, and I'm super thankful for being able to learn. There's not many times you get to walk into a situation and kind of construct a pipeline from the ground up the way you want to do it, and that taught me a ton. So that's probably the most memorable.
Nice. So Robert, if somebody wanted to learn more about your process or how Jekyll Works works, what's the best thing that they should do?
Reach out, let's discuss an interesting project, and maybe we'll be able to help achieve its realization. I mean, that's what it is. It's about reaching out. First, we're about communication and talking about the project, and like helping people figure out who's the right person to create that project. That's always the initial question.
That's it for this episode of the Film Florida podcast. Thanks to Natalie Cisneros and Robert Brown for joining us, and thank you for listening. To learn more about Jekyll Works, visit jekyllworks.com. That's jekyllworks.com. And of course, for more information about Film Florida, go to filmflorida.org. And don't forget to check out our pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And please, of course, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.